Today we talk about getting useful feedback on your cube design, and we will be treated to a special guest, Star City Games columnist Ryan Sachs. Welcome to Cultic Cube, where we cube religiously. We make you better at cube and make your cube better. I can't tell you how often I see questions on cube discussion fora that say, "What do you think of my cube?" Or, "What cards should I add or remove from my cube?" Vague and contextless questions are unlikely to generate the highest quality advice. Let's get better feedback. Here we consider how to solicit input from our players and how to consult the design hive mind. Then we take a look at a new technology for programmatic cube feedback that uses machine learning. Here we will be joined by Ryan Sachs, data scientist and Star City Games columnist, whose Cube Recommender system has recently been implemented on Cube Cobra. Most designers want to pay some deference to the desires of their playgroup, so it makes perfect sense to poll the members of the group about their play experience. I am always talking with the group about the cube, and I absolutely have included strategies and particular cards that the group lobbies for. I know some designers pass around exit surveys after each draft session, asking things such as what colors people played, whether and how people pivoted during the draft, how good fixing was, over and underperforming cards, and so on. I toyed with this notion briefly, but I found it was not especially helpful. I reproduce here my exit survey. My compatriots tended to be happy to chat about experiences, but were less excited to be given homework. If I were to try using surveys again, I would limit myself to 1 or 2 brief questions. Moreover, it is hard for people playing a cube to see the forest for the trees. This is particularly true for those who are not themselves designers. Thus, less important than individual recommendations about cards or strategies, I find, is getting a sense of whether or not one's players are having fun. Hence, it is useful to contextualize reported experience by staying in touch with how games are going. Read the room. Are people generally enjoying themselves? Do they appear to feel that they are playing interesting, agential games of Magic? Are there matches that appear consistently lopsided? Do matches run shorter or longer than expected? Are games devolving into board stalls? Are players attempting to put combos together but struggling to make them work? Have players found unexpected interactions or strategies that you might wish to push further? A thing I love doing when I end up with an odd number of players is to sit out the draft, validate my players' experience, and remark on proceedings. When players give you feedback, it is also important to keep in mind their personalities. Is Spike grousing about do-nothing Johnny cards? Does Timmy hate counting to 20 with burn spells? Does Liliana have a deep and abiding hatred for all spells white? Is Elspeth drumming her fingers while Ral tries to storm off? I do not suggest that you discount such opinions. Recognize, though, that your players approach the format with biases, just as you do, and try to account for those. Furthermore, be sensitive to the fact that those who have the strongest opinion, and who voice them most forcefully, are not, in fact, necessarily the most correct. Putting a question to design colleagues online is both easier and harder than getting feedback from one's players. It is easier, as colleagues are presumably simply more experienced cube designers. It is more difficult, as these designers lack exposure to playing your cube, and do not know the aims and aspirations that animate your design. Thus, it is up to you to provide such context when soliciting feedback. General questions, such as, "Could you take a look at my cube?" typically do not receive especially useful responses. Begin by briefly defining your cube in terms of power level, restrictions, and goals. I have a 540 card cube designed for traditional 8-player drafting that aims for a master's set power level. When speaking to enfranchised cube designers, you might employ the Strix scale, developed by my friend Parker, to describe your cube. Parker collaborated with me on a video in which he describes this scale. This video is linked in the description. Describe your own observations and concerns that you hope to address. Games tend to be grindy, and board stalls are frequent. Everyone at the table always wants to be blue. Selesnya lacks a strong identity. Games often seem to be decided in advance, based on which player drafted the greater number of mana rocks. Finally, give your interlocutors a prompt that is reasonably specific. What are some cards that might support both counters and life gain archetypes? Do I have enough combo pieces for Kiki Twin? Do Do 3-mana counterspells look too slow for my environment? The more focused your question, the more relevant your answers will be. You may, however, be interested in more schematic and theoretical answers, and that's great too. Regardless, bear in mind that responses will necessarily be colored by individual experience and taste. We designers increasingly have access to great tools that can help our design. I have a video on using a mathematical tool called hypergeometric analysis as a way of helping to judge appropriate density of particular effects in a cube or in a deck. Scryfall is a go-to for many of us when it comes to searching for magic cards. Scryfall's advanced search is super useful and easy to use, but Scryfall also allows searching via regular expressions. Anthony Maddox of the Lucky Paper podcast recently wrote a wonderful introduction to leveraging regex for better card searches. I bookmarked the article immediately, and I have referred to it a number of times now. CubeCobra, the website that you probably use to maintain your cube list, has increasing tools for conceptualizing and even for getting feedback on one's cube. Cobra allows one to browse others' cubes for inspiration, of course. It has an ELO system for ranking card popularity abstractly, using data garnered from hundreds of thousands of human drafts. And the analysis section allows one to chart a dizzying array of a cube's features. One can calculate ASFAN, or the expected number of cards with a certain characteristic to be opened in a pack, and so on. There is an exciting recent feature there as well, which is the Recommender. This system uses machine learning to suggest adds and cuts from a cube. Allow me to make a few observations before I turn it over to the author of this system. First, many of you may recall that CubeTutor, the godfather of cube organization websites, has an average cube feature that shows the most popular cards on the site, as if they were a cube. This is an interesting list, but I find that it can be misleading, and that novice designers sometimes understand the average cube to be itself a draft environment, rather than a haphazard collection of popular cards. I want to emphasize that the Cobra Recommender functions entirely differently from the Tutor average lists. The Recommender is sensitive to the context of the cube that it is studying, such that its recommended adds and cuts are derived from cubes that the algorithm recognizes as comparable. As you might expect, this means that the algorithm attempts to respect power level. But I find it remarkable how adept it is at identifying other features. Here, for instance, is my friend Thomas Krohn's one-drop cube, and as you see, the suggested adds are entirely cards that cost 1 CMC. A final super cool thing about the Recommender is that the lists it generates can be filtered, just like one's main cube list. So one can view only the green cards that the Recommender suggests. Or one can drill down still further to exactly green 3 CMC creatures. So I will introduce Ryan Sachs, who will explain the theory that underpins the Recommender system. First, however, allow me to put in a brief plug for my Patreon. Patrons join a community of like-minded cube enthusiasts, and our Discord server is a welcoming place to enjoy quality discussion on cube design. Different levels of sponsorship afford access to video assets, to beautifully produced copies of video essays, and fun surprises. I also have affiliate partnerships with TCG Player, Inked Gaming, and Amazon. I appreciate your support.
Automating feedback is quite the difficult task due to required context. There's no global card ranking that informs feedback. We can all agree that Black Lotus is one of the best cards ever printed, yet a terrible recommendation for the majority of cubes. Context is king, and so my goal in designing this recommender system was to properly learn the depths of context a cube can contain. In machine learning, representing the context of a concept is done with a technique called representation learning. Representation learning enables mathematical comparisons between complex concepts like magic cards and cubes. Incorporating card-level and cube-level representations into this model means that the model is capable of informing recommendations due to contextual similarity. More aggressive cubes are more likely to have one-drops recommended than slower cubes. A Ravnica-themed cube is more likely to get recommendations from Ravnica sets than others. The goal of this algorithm is to discern the underlying context of why the designer chose the cards they did, and then attempt to make recommendations according to other similar cubes. There will always be much room for improvement, but I believe that the current recommender system is state-of-the-art. It is exceeding my expectations by an order of magnitude. So how exactly does it work? This system is optimized for completing 2 tasks using the same partial architecture. It starts as follows. Get a cube list, remove a large percentage of cards from that cube list, say about 50%, and add a random set of cards to the cube that weren't in there in the first place. In fact, the cards that are added randomly, it's not even fully random. We're more likely to add cards that are popular, like Llanowar Elves, than we are a card that's not popular, like Wood Elemental. We call this new, fake cube now a noisy cube. The goal of this algorithm, in the first step, is to attempt to reconstruct the original cube list, that without the cards added and removed from this noisy cube. If the algorithm properly cuts cards that were randomly added and properly adds cards that were randomly cut, we reward it. After attempting this task millions and millions of times and receiving the rewards from that last step, the algorithm actually learns and it becomes quite good at recommending cards. However, it still lacks any notion of how the individual cards are related to each other. This system will see Eldrazi Skyspanner and Dinrova Horror as nearly the same card, some arbitrary Pauper cube staple. I think it's reasonable to believe that an algorithm that can differentiate individual cards is likely going to be better at recommending those individual cards. Hence, I set out to add an additional component to this algorithm. A second task. Observe that a cube is a collection of cards. This means that a card as an input is basically just a cube of length 1, a cube with 1 card. So we can actually give this cube of 1 card to the algorithm we've already devised as long as we skip that adding noise step, because, well, if the cube is 1 card, adding and removing cards from it doesn't really accomplish anything. Instead, the task is to predict how likely is it that any other Magic card belongs in the same deck as the input card. This is called the conditional deck probability distribution of that card. Thus, for every Magic card in history, we evaluate the probability that that card is in a deck, given that the input card is in that deck using data from decks built on Cube Cobra. The second task is important. It ensures that the cube-level representation contains a notion of each card's relationship with every single other Magic card when it comes to deck inclusion. Hence, recommendations aren't just informed by similar cubes, but also deck history. While we didn't get into the representation learning step in depth, as that's quite complex and involved mathematically, it's smack dab in the middle of this algorithm. In order for the algorithm to work, it has to learn a way to represent cards and cubes in forms of numbers, and those can be used for comparison. In fact, those kinds of comparisons currently even inform the draft bots on Cube Cobra. And you can see what are close to other cards in this representation on any card page. It's in the most synergistic cards section. Overall, this project is far from over. There are some bugs and kinks to fix, but as is, I believe it's a great tool for any cube designer. I often check the recommender system for inspiration using the filter function. It's not some oracle that's correct, that's going to tell you exactly what you should add and cut, but it's simply a tool that can help you as a designer find what's best for your cube. If I know I want to cut a top-end red spell, I can search for what it recommends for expensive red spells using that filter function. And it's nice to have that search functionality easily accessible. In fact, the representations this algorithm generates provides a lot of really awesome potential for search. One direction to take this is an enhanced cube search functionality, which I would be excited to implement. Imagine if you could just say, what are the most similar cubes to my cube on Cube Cobra, and get an answer with the click of a button. That would be pretty cool, right?
Thanks so much to Ryan for the explanation of the invaluable system that he has produced. Ryan is a columnist for Star City Games, where he writes really excellent articles about limited magic. And thanks to Gwen Decker and his team for Cube Cobra, which is a great resource for cube designers that only gets better by the day. Let's keep hanging out and chatting cube.